Hello again and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. You know, our last program was so interesting. I kept the rabbi in the studio to be back with us, and I brought in another guest, a good friend, Murray Farber. We had a program last week introducing Rabbi to the congregation here, our viewing public, and we also had two guests who were at the temple, very important people who were involved in the hiring process. At this point, we're not going to introduce Rabbi because now he's an old friend. You've met him last week. But we are going to be having him tell us a little bit more about himself and a little bit more about some questions that I have about Judaism and its relationship to Catholicism, and also just his whole background as a student. Being that he's a teacher, we'd like to find out some of his thoughts. Rabbi, could you begin by maybe introducing yourself for those that weren't there last week, a little bit about yourself and your family, and then Murray, maybe the same thing to introduce you. Rabbi.
Hello. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here. Pertinent to this, certainly, I'm a native Californian and thrilled to be out here in Fresno now. My undergraduate education, I studied at the University of California, Santa Barbara, which is not only one of the top religious studies institutions in the country, but it's especially known for comparative religion.
Nice.
So even better than the various theology schools for being able to learn cross theological lines. And that was a wonderful education. From there, I went on to the Hebrew Union College Seminary of the Reform Jewish stream. We do our first year of that in Jerusalem, and then 4 years at the stateside campuses. I also did 1 year of my undergraduate in Jerusalem as well. So it's most of us don't grow up here in America speaking Hebrew, and there in Israel it's a much easier place to learn the language. So my wife and I went through seminary together. She's also a rabbi, a little bit different than the Catholic tradition, and then my two sons would love to be able to speak Hebrew so that they can understand what we're saying when we're talking about them.
Isn't that important that they would learn? And I think Saul and Max are up for this. Do they must have some rudimentary.
Oh yeah, certainly.
That's
when they
good.
train for
Good.
bar mitzvah, they learn to read and chant, but understanding as a spoken language is a whole nother level.
Great. Murray, remind us who haven't remembered the last time you were on this panel, but you've helped us many other times sharing about your own experience in interfaith dialogue. Tell us a little bit about Murray and a little bit about your formation there at Fairfield University, working with those Jesuits.
Well, here in California, I've been a member of the board of the Jewish Federation, Jewish Community Relations Council, and formerly on the board of Temple of Beth Israel. And before moving here to California, when I was in Connecticut, I was somehow surviving 3 terms as president of a congregation there. But interestingly, I think for this occasion, I spent about 18 years as director of public relations and spokesman for Fairfield University, a Jesuit university. And in retrospect, sort of surprised it lasted that long, because when I first got the call recruiting me, I hadn't applied, I was called, and I told Father Burke, "You want me? I'm not Catholic." But I wound up working there 18 years.
You know, I want to stay with that for a minute, Murray, because it's more than just fascinating and interesting. It's also very enlightening to think that the Jesuits knew to reach you and that you would do so well for them at the university. How did that call come if you didn't even elicit it? You didn't solicit it?
I had gone back to school after 25 years to work on my master's degree, and I had a background in writing about religion going way back to 1957. So I'd always had this interest. And I came in at a time when the Jesuits and I think the Catholic Church was going through a big change. Yeah. We started an organization on campus called Jewish Forum, and one of our speakers was Father Allen, a wonderful speaker who talked about an apology for the way the Jesuits had behaved during the Dreyfus Affair. So it's part of this big change that we've seen in Jewish-Catholic relations.
You know, speaking of a big change, when I put a question to Rabbi on the preliminary interview format, he said, I'm too young, I don't go back that far. But be that as it may, let's not talk about the history of Jewish-Catholic relations. Let's talk about maybe right now how both of you feel. What do you feel, the temperature, the barometer readings of Catholic-Jewish dialogue at this point, collaboration, the relationship, how is it, ballpark idea?
It's always gone very well for me. I ran a program in the Bay Area where I came from of specifically Catholic-Jewish dialogue. We talked a bit about that in preparation for this. A wonderful program that has great resources for bringing people together, and the communities were very engaged in what we did. I found that there's been a lot of wonderful dialogue, a lot of getting together on the subjects, and a lot of people wanting to look past old history and just be together in the partnership that we have as part of the faith community.
Murray, did this experience with the Jesuits, did you have a life before the Jesuits and after the Jesuits regarding Catholic-Jewish relations, or what?
Well, I had been a writer, as I said, on for a religion page going back to the 50s for a newspaper in New Jersey, and then I was managing editor of a newspaper in Connecticut. And one of my mentors was a very strong Catholic layman who taught me a lot about the Catholic Church. In terms of more current relations, one of the significant things to me was seeing a class in Judaic Studies at Fairfield University being oversubscribed by Catholic students who want to know more about their heritage and more about their background. And I think it's in line with what we see now in terms of the writings, secular and religious writings, dealing with Jesus as a Jew. There's a great interest in this now. There's just an explosion of books about it, and the students were very interested.
You know, we're going to be looking at another future forum to actually focus on that concept. Jesus from a Jewish point of view, because it really is not just a trend it's an interesting thing. You know, there's a few scholars out there. It's actually the most important thing in scripture study at the moment, at least for me as a Catholic, is to have it clear that Jesus was a Jew. And it's not that he was later something else. He's a Jewish young man, and that's that. Very important to keep that very clear, and that the early church was totally Jewish. It seemed to become Hellenized very soon, but the original community was Jewish, Palestinian, and we need to appreciate that. And I'm so glad that Rabbi and Murray, as we continue this program, will help us see further reasons why Jesus' Jewishness is definitely going to be important. Rabbi, one question you did say you'd like to talk about is possible misunderstandings that people may have that you might think this is a chance to clarify. What's one thing in Judaism that you think Christians might not quite get this concept? They might not understand it.
One of the most significant misunderstandings that not only is an issue today, but goes back to the time of Jesus, is the question of Judaism's legality. That it's a religion of laws, which it is indeed, but it is how one uses the law. So, for example, in today's American court system, you may have a judge who chooses to hand down a very strict sentence, or you may have a judge who might be creative and say, I'm going to send someone to a rehabilitation program that really is there to help that person. Throughout the history of Judaism, there have been ups and downs in how the legal system has been used, and that's really not about the religion, but about the people of the time and how they use it. It was a problem during Jesus' time, and he was one of other Jewish leaders who were having an issue with it. But then, today, and throughout history, we can use the Jewish legal tradition to be just as compassionate as going without law. There are times where the tradition will offer us comfort in order to make sure that people are well taken care of and treat each other well, as opposed to inhumane legality, which is not really set in the stone carving, I would say, but more in how people have interpreted what has been handed to us. So I think that focus on legality and how it's handed out has been misunderstood for thousands of years.
I think so from the start.
What I'd
Murray-
like them to understand, or everyone to understand, is the connection between Judaism and the land of Israel. The promised land, part of our daily prayers, a connection of over 3,000 years, in modern times a refuge, and even during the whole of the diaspora there was always a Jewish remnant in Israel. And I think maybe that's a part of us that's not always understood, the importance of it, and the history on how the land was chopped up. At one time it was a much larger land. It's been partitioned. So I think if I had the opportunity to teach someone, it would be about that. Why is Israel so important to Jews?
Well, then what we'll do, taking that as under advisement in a future program on the forum, which is meant to be a forum for a better understanding, let's better understand the importance of Eretz Israel for Judaism.
Excellent
and
idea.
therefore, to the rest of us too.
Good.
Because it seems to me as a Catholic, whatever is pertinent to Judaism is pertinent to us. Because if there's one thing we need to do, and we need to do it better and more often, is to see the rooting in Israel. And therefore not as something that has been superseded, but rather something that is a current connection. They are our roots, and therefore if there's an appreciation in Judaism for the land, we should have somehow a similar passion in our own way. So I think we'll make sure we schedule those programs. Rabbi, one thing that's interesting to me, in seminary training, going back already since the Vatican Council, Catholic seminaries are making major inroads in that there will be tremendous Hebrew study. People will learn Hebrew scripture. People will learn Hebrew. A lot of people are going for doctorates, living in Israel and learning Hebrew and Aramaic. There'll also be a lot of study of Judaism itself, the faith, the religion, the culture. In seminary at Union, would there be courses you've taken, as we would take a course with a rabbi? Would there be priests on campus maybe? Are there courses increasingly or not on Catholicism, on the New Testament, on Jesus, or not? I don't know.
Actually, most of the Catholics who were on campus were students together with us, studying Aramaic and ancient Hebrew and such. At the time that I was in seminary, it was not a required part of study. It is becoming so. I took extra classes in New Testament and such from the one professor who taught it at our seminary in Cincinnati, and then and he has just come out with a new book talking about the shift and the need for Jewish seminarians to really understand better the parallel communities. So it is becoming more of a focus of study, a piece of which is becoming a requirement. But for many of us at the time that I was in school, it was just something that I figured I'm living in a society in which the predominant culture is Christian. I'm fascinated by religious history, so I'd like to know more about it. So I studied it both undergraduate and in the seminary.
Well, thank you very much for the first half of our program, because they're telling us we need to take our 1-minute break. Would you take a moment yourselves to get ready, because in 60 seconds we're going to be back with Rabbi and Murray Farber to talk more about Jewish-Christian dialogue. Stay tuned.
KNXT, the nation's only full-powered broadcast station, owned and operated by a Catholic diocese in the U.S. and streaming live on the internet at knxt.tv. Need your support to keep the message of the good news alive. Just go to knxt.tv, click on the Make a Financial Gift, go to Donate, and fill out your one-time or monthly offering under PayPal. It's just that easy. Your donation makes it possible for KNXT, Catholic Television, to continue its ministry by celebrating the Mass and proclaiming the gospel. Thank you from KNXT.
Hello and welcome back to Forum for a Better Understanding. Last week we introduced you to Rabbi Rick. Today we're introducing you to not only to Rabbi Rick but also Murray Farber, and we're talking with people again from Temple Beth Israel as we celebrate with them their new rabbi and also what could be the beginning again of a great connection, Catholic and Jewish, here in the Diocese of Fresno. Now, Rabbi, one thing that I'd like you to answer briefly, and also Murray, are there three concepts or words or phenomena that you might think they are similar in Judaism and Christianity, and these are the things we could find as the beginnings of dialogue because we really do have a common appreciation of these things? What might they be, Rabbi?
Probably one of the most significant that brings us together is monotheism. I believe we share that.
The same God, actually, and everyone better believe that. It's not a different God.
Right, and that would, yes, absolutely. So that certainly unites us. One of the other things that unites us is an engagement in the world and a desire to make the world a better place. Which is one of the terms that we'll get to.
Which we're going to come up later, but that's a sneak preview.
One of the other ones that I think not only do we share, but it sets us apart from some other religions is ritual.
Oh, yeah.
When I find that people are exploring Judaism from a background of Catholicism, they find comfort in ritual. For some people, that's not their thing, but I'm used to it. My friends in the Catholic Church are used to it as well. There can be, for those who like it, not only a comfort, but a majesty, a tradition, all of those things that bring us together.
And I would say, and Catholics should line up on this one, we get that from you. It's not like, well, you got it from us. Actually not.
I'll let you say that.
They're much older, and we're learning. And that ritual, the lectionary, the whole idea of a progressive read of Scripture, it's rabbinic, it's Jewish. Is there anything, Murray, more of one thing or two that unite us?
Well, one of the things I found fascinating is that the Orthodox rabbi, the great scholar, Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, said that there should be closer ties between the religions. And it might seem strange because the Orthodox tend to be more withdrawn. But he said closer ties on non-theological issues. Issues such as poverty, war, freedom. And I think when it comes to issues such as that, I think there's a common concern, also issues involving family. So that there are areas, these broad cultural areas, that I think we have common interests in, especially here in the Valley, on an issue such as poverty.
It's a great way that Judaism and Catholicism work together today because we come to it from different perspectives, but that doesn't matter. When it means feeding the hungry and all of that, it may be a slightly different perspective that gets us there, but the goals and the mission are the same.
And on the great cosmological issues, I think we're looking for answers. Who is God? What is God? Yeah. What do we know about God? And we have that in common.
We do this philosophical quest that is very
I want to know more. I want to know more.
Scholarship, these things that unite us. And as I said, if it unites us, we get it from Judaism. It's our roots. It's some of our best stuff, is some of the older stuff. Rabbi, there's a bunch of words, many, many beautiful words that we're going to be able to put on the screen, and as you'd like, could you unpack them and help us appreciate some of these words which begin with that great concept of tikkun olam. What is this concept?
That's what I alluded to a moment ago when we were talking about the concept of repairing the world, which is literally what it means, tikkun, to repair, olam, the world or universe. It comes from mystical Judaism, but in liberal Judaism today, we think of it very much as that hands-on, getting down and doing the work of making the world a better place.
Then another concept that we all use it, we even try to think we're being Jewish when we say it, shalom. Give us a little bit more depth to shalom than saying hello.
Right, so the classic hello, goodbye, and peace. But going back to tikkun olam, when we engage in repair, we're looking for a sense of completion. And so the root of the word shalom, back to shalom, is completion. So when we think about peace, it's not a lack of war, it's a sense of feeling complete.
Now, one thing that you try to accomplish in your life is to do mitzvah and to share this. Tell us a little bit about why it's so wonderful when someone says, that's a mitzvah. What is a mitzvah?
Well, it's commonly translated as a good deed, which is a mistranslation. And when we were talking about the earlier idea of where things are misunderstood, this is an interesting example. While it mostly shows up as a good deed, literally the word means commandment. And so the way I take that, for example, is I've trained myself. Every time I go to Costco, I buy an extra, or one of those retail establishments that has a lot of stuff. I buy a case of the individual cans of tuna because these are perfect for food pantries. And I have treated it as a commandment. Even if I don't feel like doing it, I do it. Not because it makes me feel better, but because my tradition teaches me to take care of those in need. So I buy one of those and I put it in our food pantry bin. And it goes off to those in need, to the local food pantry for the community. I do that out of a sense of commandedness, as opposed to just a good deed. That would be the real meaning, the essence of mitzvah.
The next one is really a very, very important term, not too commonly seen in the way we're going to explain it maybe, but I think I'd love you to stay on this word for a while. Tzedakah. What do we have here?
And it's also got one of those Hebrew sounds that we don't have in English. So it's tzedakah, with that TZ sound at the beginning. It's a tough one. And again, similar to the concept of mitzvah, when we think about it, our kids come to Sunday school and they plop a quarter into a box that is then given to some kind of charity. Charity is actually a borrowed word from Christianity, which is...
We gave you something.
Yeah, we borrowed that one back from you. Tzedakah is a different concept. Charity is about love, which is great. Tzedakah means justice. And so balancing the scales of justice, it's done in the sense of giving in order to make sure those who are in need have something. But it's the perspective is not just free giving, it's giving because it's the just right thing to do.
I just add on that in many homes for years there were the little blue boxes, and once a week, coins would be put in there. And nowadays it's very common when a kid is having a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah, that all or a portion of gifts is turned over for tzedakah to some good cause.
Paul VI, one of my favorite popes actually, did have a famous saying, if you want peace, work for justice. Then I also heard Walter Brueggemann one time say, we've done too much shalom, too little tzedakah. Do you agree in a sense that if we did more of this justice, that is that prophetic cry from Amos and the other great prophets, the world might be in a different place right now?
There's certainly room for more. And whether it's work for shalom or work for tzedakah or mitzvah, they're all good. I like to focus upon the things that bring us together. And there are so many possibilities. We can spend a lifetime doing it. And I know of people who do. So we don't have to take time for the divisive issues. All of these bring us together and allow us to do work together.
The prophet said, justice, justice shall you seek. And they also said, is this the fast I desired? That's not necessarily the ritual, it's the way of life and helping the poor.
Very much so.
The next term is really important because in Catholicism we think of a conversion as being a metanoia, Greek idea, like you change your mind. Way better, way more profound, the Jewish concept of teshuvah. Unpack that for us.
Well, there again, when we look at the Hebrew root, the root is to return. And so the concept is turning and returning to connection to God. When we, and we're going to get into that with another term in a while, I think, but let me just skip ahead. In the English terms, we talk about atonement, which can be broken into at one meant,
Yep.
being at one. And so when one returns to a connection to their spirituality, to their godliness, then they're returning to the oneness that not only brings us together with the community around us, but with the God of all creation.
One more word that I do think we have time for. Probably we could spend a whole show on this alone. Chesed. Unpack this tremendously rich concept.
Another great one, and when you look at it on your screen, you're going to have a challenge. Do you put the H? Do you put the C? It's halfway in between. Chesed, like Chanukah, is a hard H or a soft K, and it's one of those terms that's not easy to just give a simple straight translation, but it's a sense of giving, of graciousness, of compassion. All of those things together are in Chesed. So I would say that bumper sticker that people used to put up, acts of random kindness.
Oh, yes.
That's probably a good sense of what we're trying to accomplish with Chesed.
I've seen it, and I think my RSV translation puts it loving kindness, as if that's one way they just locked in on saying, for your loving kindness is without end. Psalm 119 winds up being over and over making that refrain, for his great love is without end. Last word, Rabbi, that we want to post, we're going to skip a few, Greg. Shabbat. We can't not have a panel unpack a little bit about the spirituality of the Shabbat.
Shabbat, yeah, that's a good one. In English, straight, direct translation, Sabbath. And if we had time for a whole lesson, I can show you how it's exactly the same word. Anyway, Shabbat is not only the seventh day, the day of rest, but it's a day to taste the world to come. Whether one thinks of that as a peaceful, harmonious world on earth or a taste of heavenly redemption.
Unfortunately, we have used up all our little time that we had today, but we will be back again next week, as we are each week at this time. I want to thank Rabbi Rick Weiner for being on twice in the last couple of weeks. I want to thank Murray Farber for joining him in this program. It's so important to celebrate great things in the Valley in the area of religion, and to have a new rabbi lead the congregation at Temple Beth Israel is a blessing, not only to them, but to us as well. We wish well to the temple, and we hope that next week when we're here, we will be able to share some other topics with you on Forum for a Better Understanding. God bless.